it's a perfectly legal transaction. It's been vetted by White House counsel, by the Justice Department. There are outside law firms involved. So it's a perfectly legal government to government, Department of Defense to Department of Defense transaction.
Could it color the perception of the administration if they have a $400 million plan to be more in favor of these things? Perhaps. It at least gives the appearance of a conflict of interest. I don't think it's worth the headache, and I think it's detracting from a largely successful trip to the Middle East.
There you have the Trump administration as well as members of Congress weighing in today on that $400 million plane Qatar plans to give President Trump, intended to serve as Air Force One temporarily. Joining me now is Democratic Representative Deborah Ross of North Carolina. She sits on the Ethics and Judiciary Committees and is the vice chair of the Subcommittee on Constitution, Civil Rights, and Civil Liberties. We're awfully glad you're here, ma'am. Thank you for joining us. So from an ethics standpoint, is this as legal and proper as Mr. Witkoff is arguing? And how can it be a gift to the Department of Defense and not to the president himself if Donald Trump, after office, plans to take ownership of it after he leaves?
Well, good to be with you. No, it is not legal, and the Amendments Clause of the Constitution. And we have a long history of presidents who have been offered gifts from foreign countries. Many of those presidents have simply turned them down. But the alternative that Donald Trump has is to come to Congress and ask for our approval of this gift. And that has happened in the past. Sometimes Congress has said yes, and sometimes it has said no. The Democrats on the Judiciary Committee have issued a resolution asking the Trump administration to bring this before Congress, because that is what the Constitution requires. But he just wants to accept the gift, create a constitutional conflict, and create this real taint, not just on that trip, but on our relationships in the Middle East. It's just wrong.
Let me ask you, I believe it was Senator Kennedy who made the comparison, or at least asked the question, of what France gave to the United States, the Statue of Liberty, and said, was that legal? I mean, it doesn't feel like a fair one-on-one comparison. Give me your thoughts on that.
Well, I don't know all the history about the Statue of Liberty, but that wasn't given to the president. And if Congress thought it was great to have the Statue of Liberty, which I assume Congress would think is a good idea, then that's the process. The key is that there is a process. Our founders set up this process, and President Trump is not beyond the law or the Constitution. He needs to follow the process. If he wants the plane, he has to ask for Congress to agree to accept it.
Okay, let's turn now together to the GOP mega bill, because the House Budget Committee, as you know, is going to try for a second time to advance that bill. That happens less than 8 hours from now, 10 p.m. tonight. Do you think it will pass this time? And how could it change to get those hardline Republicans on board?
Well, I cannot read the tea leaves on this one, because the Republican conference is divided, and different parts of the Republican conference want different things that are completely in conflict with each other. So the more moderates want more services for their people. They also want greater tax relief under SALT. The more really the MAGA, ultra MAGA wing, the Freedom Caucus, doesn't like the deficit that this creates. And they have a point there. But what they want to do is have more tax breaks for the wealthiest people in this country and take away food assistance, take away health care through Medicaid, take away a lot of things that our families rely on. That's a conflict they're going to have to work out. But the bottom line is this: both of their solutions increase the deficit and hurt the American people.
And to your point about Medicaid, the CBO says that Medicaid cuts would result in 10 million people losing coverage. And it's stumbling still because some Republicans argue, hey, that's not enough. Cut Medicaid more. It's also going to raise the deficit, though, this bill. What would the consequences, big picture, be of this bill? And is there a level of work requirements that Democrats would support in order to obtain Medicaid?
What people do not realize, and I think that the Republicans are denying, is that there are three groups of people who get Medicaid, predominantly get the Medicaid: children, people with disabilities, and people in nursing homes. More than half of the people in nursing homes receive Medicaid. So the work requirements that the Republicans are putting in are trying to get the parents of those children and other people to not accept Medicaid. They also want to kick those same people off of the Affordable Care Act. But Medicaid, by and large, is helping children, pregnant women or women who just had children, people with disabilities, and people in nursing homes. And the Republicans want to frame Medicaid as something that is not for everyday Americans, but everyday Americans rely on Medicaid. And scaring people off of Medicaid will only make people sicker. Then they won't have insurance and they won't be able to pay their medical bills. There's something very, very wrong and very, very cruel with their assessment of Medicaid.
And especially when you're going to ask those three groups you were naming in particular about work requirements. But let me get to the hearing on the Trump administration's effort to curb birthright citizenship, because the Solicitor General was asked about how enforcement would actually work. And here's what he said. The quote is, "We don't know," adding federal officials will have to figure that out. Is this administration moving forward with their agenda with no real plan for the follow-through?
This administration isn't planning on any kinds of follow-through. I mean, I represent North Carolina, where they're not even getting the money out the door that we appropriated for Hurricane Helene. But what is the worst thing about this administration is that they have done unconstitutional things like birthright citizenship. They have no idea how they would even implement it. And then when they are told by the courts that this is unconstitutional, and every court that has heard the birthright citizenship issue, no matter who appointed that judge, has said that it's flatly unconstitutional, they still keep pressing it. They have to understand the people of this country have economic concerns. They have health care concerns. They're worried about their kids' education. This administration should stop violating the Constitution and start taking care of people.
Representative Deborah Ross, thank you so much for your time with us on this Sunday. Appreciate that. Next.